Hey guys, if you've ever watched an American movie, then you know that criminals usually get sanctioned by the law for pretty much any bad deed that they do that is codified within the law. The other day I thought of this really interesting thought. Right, so if everyone is an angel, and I mean everyone in our society is an angel, then would we still really need laws? Because the argument behind that is that why would we need laws to sanction criminal behavior when there isn't criminal behavior to begin with? So, in the fourth episode of The Law Enthusiasts, we're going to discuss this really interesting question together. Let's get into it. Okay, first of all, I believe that the crux of this issue essentially boils down to understanding the purpose of laws. And initially, when I was younger and I was really influenced by these American movies, I used to think that the law is meant to sanction criminal behavior, such as, robbery or murder. But eventually, as I grew older, I realized that, yes, that is true. I mean, the law does sanction bad behavior, but that is not its sole purpose. The law is basically a tool to regulate social behavior. For instance, it regulates the relationship between parents and children, and henceforth we have family law, or the relationship between employers and employees, and hence labor law, or the relationship between states, and hence international law. But also, the law controls the relationship between humans and non-human entities, such as animals or the environment. So with that said, I believe that laws still hold a pivotal role even in angelic societies, and here are the two arguments why. My first argument is that even though the person has good intentions, ethical conundrums are inevitable. For example, as you may know, in the famous trolley problem, the player must choose between sacrificing one person to save five or five to save one person. And assuming that there are no other possible options, this could easily trip up even those with the highest moral standards because, you'd still have to get your hands dirty despite being a firm advocate against murder. The classic trolley problem, however absurd and unrealistic it may seem, has happened numerous times in the real world. A notable example is during the COVID-19 pandemic, and there was a shortage of hospital capacities in contrast to the masses of patients in need of medical treatment. Even though doctors must always strictly swear by the Hippocratic Oath to uphold the highest of medical ethics, this ethical dilemma forced them to prioritize one patient over the other. So, situations like these require laws that are founded upon a value consensus to guide the person to the most optimum solution that would benefit the most number of parties involved. Therefore, the first reason why I believe we'd still need laws in a society where everyone is an angel is because guidelines are still required to steer people into the right path in ethically convoluted scenarios. But not only that, moving on to my second argument, is that the law also acts as an ethical middle ground. Okay, hear me out. There is no such thing as eternally moral, and the concept of what is moral changes depending on historical eras and geographical zones. For example, more than 1,750 years ago, in the sultry airs of the Babylon, King Hammurabi enacted the Marry Your Rapist law. It basically entails that if a man rapes a woman, that he must marry her. Now, as a Vietnamese person in the 21st century, I find that absolutely ridiculous. But within the context of ancient Babylon, compensating for the damages that you have inflicted upon a woman by degrading her dignity, by marrying her, was seen as moral, and it worked in that society. So, since the concept of morality varies from person to person, let alone between states and historical eras, assumingly angels and angels, laws are still needed to uphold and sustain a value consensus in which the majority of people find reasonable and proportional. And by retaining a value consensus, you are minimizing the chances of your society collapsing into anarchy. However, in evaluation, not everyone thinks that laws reflect a value consensus, but only the values that benefit the bourgeoisie or aka the middle class, the upper class, sorry. But that's a topic for a different video. But for the sake of this episode, let's just say that the law is still needed in angelic societies because it acts as an ethical middle ground that reflects the value consensus. Okay, so now that we know that the law is still incredibly important even in angelic societies, what do you think may happen if we, even as just regular, normal human beings, don't have them? If the first word that comes to your mind is anarchy or a scene from the Hunger Games, yes, that may be true, but you would also be incorrect in some circumstances. The thing is, it all depends on which time era you're talking. And after having read Sapiens by historian Harari, I learned that more than 70,000 years ago, people didn't have laws. They didn't have laws, and despite that, they lived in relative harmony and social cohesion. Why is that, you may ask? Well, back then, people lived in tribes, most of which not exceeding 150 members. And these aren't just 150 random members in the middle of nowhere. They had familial bonds. So basically the bonds between families and close relatives. They believed in and valued similar things and were usually related by blood. So basically when you have a situation where everyone knows one another personally, most economic transactions within the tribe are founded upon trust and custom, not legal rights and responsibilities. But the thing here is that once you exceed this 150 person threshold, not everything can be bound based on trust anymore. And this is exactly what happened. The tribes became villages, the villages became cities, cities became kingdoms, kingdoms between nations, and all of a sudden, we are an international community on the verge of globalization with even more relationships to handle. And there's no way we're just gonna sit out here and become friends with 8 billion people, right? And thankfully, by this day and age, we already have laws to hold us accountable to our business clients, our husband or wife, the government, the environment, and even our pets. So if for whatever reason we were to abolish all laws tomorrow just for the next 24 hours, we may crumble into an anarchy. But by any chance you are a prehistorical tribe member, then you're good for the most part. And enjoy not having to pay for taxes. Okay, and there you have it. In the 4th episode of The Law Enthusiasts, I've explained to you why I personally believe that laws are still necessary in a society where everyone is moral and good as an angel, because 1, they steer people in the most beneficial path in ethical conundrums, and that they act as a moral middle ground. We've also looked at what it would be like in a society without laws and why laws are not always needed for a society to function cohesively and in harmony. But what do you think? So what's your stance on this question? Please drop your viewpoints in the comment section below. But for now, thank you so much for listening to the 4th episode of The Law Enthusiasts. I appreciate you listening and see you in the next episode. Bye!